welcome to Frankly Speaking with Frank Portinari, the podcast that gains access to real and inspiring people. Today, our guest is the accidental journalist, Jack W. Gregory, and I'm sure he'll explain to you why he has that very nice title. In the meantime, I'd just like to make a few announcements. We welcome our sponsor, Casual Minds, designers and distributors of quality casual clothing. We're working together with them to support Casual Minds Matter. Their message is checking in on male mental health. Every Monday night they meet in a community centre in Burnley. They are actually meeting tonight. They're providing great support, and we'd like to think that will expand further around the UK and even possibly beyond, but they're doing a fantastic job. We also like to thank all those that follow Frankly Speaking on the various mediums that we have. We do appreciate that support, but we clearly would welcome more subscribers if people could leave comments and if they could like the guests, because we feel that's respectful to the guests who give up their time to come and share their real and inspiring stories with us. Yes, and I should stress that those mediums are Amazon Music, Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, and of course YouTube. We'd also like to acknowledge the amazing work done by the Alzheimer's Society, all the support that they give both victims and their families, and of course the other charity that we support, Change Your Life, Put Down Your Knife, which speaks for itself as an anti-knife campaign. Last but not least, we'd like to thank Gary from Mac the Hat Media for all his technical advice and the support that he gives us. But the main man today is Jack, and so let's get down to business. And Jack, welcome to Frankly Speaking.
Thanks for having me on, mate. It's good to be finally able to get on air and speak to you. I know it's been a while in planning.
Yeah, likewise. And I will say to the viewers that quite a few months ago now, Jack very kindly invited me onto his own podcast. Very thorough, very good interviewer, I must say. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think you asked some very relevant questions, and I appreciate that. And it's good to have you in the hot seat today, Jack.
Yeah, I'm getting used to it.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you are. First of all, Jack, we'd like to learn a little bit about your background. Which town or city did you grow up in?
So I was born in Glasgow and grew up in a small mining town called Normanton, which is just a few miles outside Wakefield in West Yorkshire, which is in itself surrounded by mining towns. So it's known as the Five Towns.
Yeah. That strikes me as a very tough place to grow up.
Yeah. A little, you know. I suppose I had it better than a lot of other kids. You know, my dad was a railway man, a civil engineer. My mum was works for social services. They own their own house in a decent part of town. So I never really knew. Yeah, I must have been 7 when the miners' strike started. But I do remember vividly the town starting to crumple. And I don't think it's never really recovered. You know, only recently it started recovering due to, you know, when they built the Freeport a few miles away.
I was going to say, are you talking financially and infrastructure?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the you see, because it's a market town as well. You know, and if there's no miners, families, if they're not making the money, They're not spending the money in the market, so that part of town is failing. People are having to go further to work because as they shut the pits down, they shut them from what I remember from the inside outwards. So it was the smaller pits that went first, and then the larger pits went after. You know, I do remember the working men's clubs and the you know, you had your faces around town, you had the old men that they had that look in their eye, not able to supply for the family. And there was a lot of problems with, you know, do you go and work, you know, and be known as a scab, or do you stand, you know? So I heard, I, I got to hear on occasion um, some of these union men speak. Um, you know, we had old Arthur Scargill up at the school, and these men seemed strong and mighty, but you know, you looked in their eyes a year later, and different men because it just the town just started to fail. So the nicer areas had started to, and you know, the property value went down.
Yeah.
A lot of them are the Victorian Edwardian townhouses. And they went for a song. So you know, it's really sad to see. It still is.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that
I
still
can't
think
imagine.
that.
I think the only, I nowhere near the same. Nowhere near the same. This is no way, in no way, shape, or form trying to compete. That's for sure. But the only thing I can liken that to is when you get to a certain age in your life and you suddenly get made redundant, and you suddenly think, hold on, where do I go from here? You know, but yeah, those circumstances had a lot of emotive reactions as well, didn't they? It did tear people apart. It tore families apart, communities apart, and so on. And what was your education like, Jack? Were you studious?
I didn't really have an education, to be honest. So I was seen as low intelligence. There was no such thing as dyslexia really when I was growing up. I couldn't read or write. Well, I could barely read or write, and it would take. I would understand stuff, different stuff that I believe I've got a divergent brain. So there's stuff that I do understand and stuff that I don't understand. So mathematics and things like that. And, you know, I've got total dyscalculia. I hate it. It really does wind me up. But I always had words in my head, and I was always good with words, and I was always good, but I couldn't get them down on paper. And I was always good with general knowledge if I was interested, but I couldn't get it down on paper. So, you know, I went to the local middle school, and they really didn't do anything for me. I mean, this was like when I was 8, on my 8th birthday. I remember it was the weekend of my 8th birthday, and I'd had a really nice day and lots of presents and pop and crisps and proper Yorkshire platter, you know, the big tea platters with scones and cakes, and it was really nice. And then my mum sat me on a knee, and my dad was sitting there reading his paper, looking over his spectacles as he did. And she said to me, you know, we love you very much. But you weren't up until recently actually ours. You're adopted.
Oh.
And I remember vividly the pain in her eyes. Now that I'm older, I remember that.
Yeah.
and I can look back in retrospect and think about how that must have affected her.
Mm.
But I didn't see that I was loved by them. I knew I was loved by them, but I thought I was abandoned. So I had these abandonment issues.
Mm.
Um, so having an existential crisis at 8 years old,
Mm.
what do you do? Um, so I started to make things up. I thought, well, if I don't know who I am, I could be literally anybody that I want to be. So I would just lie. And the
Mm.
proper, no way it could have happened. But I just lied just to try and be anywhere but in my own head. So I'd create these worlds and I'd mimic people and I got quite good at it. And, I got quite good at acting. And so I would pretend to be all these other people. And then they sent me at the age of 12, I think, after I'd managed a year in high school. I've got no idea how I managed that. Pushing my way through. They put me in special school education.
Mm.
And it was a school for maladjusted children masked as a special school. And it was horrible.
Mm.
It was a small school. If you imagine what a junior school used to be, it would have it had like 4 years, but probably the same amount of kids in all those 4 years than you get in 1 year now. On a few hundred kids. But this was in one of the mining towns that was affected really, really badly. So you're talking 1989. And the school in Pontefract, it's at the bottom of it's like an add-on to the high school, one of the high schools there. And we used to have fights with them because they hated us, used to call us spastics and all sorts. But special school education was shite, frankly. Can't really say anything else about it. It was crap. They rewarded bad behaviour with good things like going climbing, caving,
Mm.
abseiling. So by the time I'd left school, I had nothing to show for it. We didn't do any exams. We came away with a few certificates,
Mm.
changing a fuse in a plug, answering a private telephone, riding a 50cc moped. Yeah, I could teach climbing, caving, canoeing, abseiling, all quite prevalently.
Yeah.
Um, but that was their way of keeping you in check. They were they would get the army youth team in, and sometimes when we would do that. But that's when I started being abused by some of the teachers and appropriate adults, you might say,
Mm.
because I had created this world, and then it got worse because they would say, "Well, who's going to believe you? Nobody's going to believe you because you're just a liar." So, and then when you're being abused, you create these other worlds as well.
Mm.
So,
Can I just ask you, and I hope this isn't going to bring back too many bad memories. Are we talking physical abuse or are we talking sexual abuse? Yeah, I really didn't want to ask that, but I suspected that's what it might be.
Sexual abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse.
How long did that persist?
89 to 93.
Jesus.
When I ran out of school. But they also put me in college while I was still at school um, because I loved poetry and stuff like that. So I was allowed to do stuff like that and do poetry workshops and acting workshops. But the minder, you know, at 13, 14, 15, I'm drinking, I'm
Mm.
doing smoking, whatever I can, and you know, um, one one of the teachers had got this mate who was part of how do we say it? A certain anonymous program.
Mm.
So I was I was indoctrinated into that
Yep.
really quite early into 12 steps. Now I still use the 12 steps today, but I don't go to meetings because
Yeah.
you know I did that for many years. But yeah, and the man that was taking me there, he was one of the abusers, so I couldn't get away from it. And then even when I was like 16, 17,
Mm.
I couldn't get away from it because knew people in my town, and he would tell my parents, "Oh, I'll take him out for the day. You know,
Mm.
get him out of your hair."
Yeah.
So I suppressed that for many, many years.
Mm.
At, at 14, 15, 16, on a dinner time, because the, the part of Pontefract that the school is, it was basically a mile anywhere. So on a dinner time, I made my money by running for the local dealers, running
Mm.
dope, uh, porn, videos, knockoff videos, uh, knockoff CDs. They weren't they weren't that well known then.
Mm.
And I only remember it because it was Fat of the Land, Prodigy. That was one of the
Um,
first CDs that I'd got to knock about. And I had a good work ethic. I was doing that and, making shitloads of money, and I was um, doing 2 paper rounds. Was doing a milk round, um, 2 Saturday jobs, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, one in the key cutting shop and one in the plaster shop, making dado rails out of plaster.
yeah, yeah.
So I had a good work ethic, but when I left school, nobody would employ me. And, I managed to get a couple of little jobs. I suppose my first proper job was at Burberry's in Castleford, working as a button marker, marking buttons on waistcoats. And then I went to H.E. Brown's and did that. I didn't last very long. I didn't really get on with people. I tended to be off in my own sort of head.
Mm.
Um, I didn't really want to be at home anymore. I love my parents to bits.
Mm. Did you ever confide in anybody? No, I didn't
I had
think.
nobody.
No.
Nobody. I had one mate, and he had his own sort of demons, but
Mm.
so at like 16, 17, 18, I just wanted to be off. So, I was good at voices. I was good at mimicking people. I was good at being other people. I was doing a drama course and workshops with the National Youth Theatre, and I was doing drama courses with the local technical college. And you know, through the week, and then on the weekend, I was ripping people off in the local pubs and clubs in Wakefield.
Mm.
You know, weaving these fantastic lies. That I was on holiday, or I was, I'd come from Canada or America, and I'd have these people eating out of my hand, and then I got involved with a, a, a long con firm out in Leeds, Gipton, on the Shakespeare estate, and it's where I met Paul Sykes, and he came out to sort out a problem. I remember we needed some heavies, and he came out, and somebody had a business card, and it said the Last Resort Debt Collection Agency, Paul Sykes, something like actor, author, whatever. And he was sort of well known around there. I liked him. He wasn't to everybody's taste. Broke my jaw with a slap. Because I was taking the piss. You know. And yeah. So by the time I was like 18, I was playing Billy Big Bollocks in Leeds, and then I was going home, and I was living in a bed sit in Pontefract that wasn't really any much bigger than my shed that I'm sat in now. And I lived this life of this meek, scared kid that didn't really know much, so I didn't really get any shit from anybody. People could push me about, and I wouldn't do anything. Yet when I was going away, I was acting as a punch bag for somebody just to make a bit of money. So yeah, that's where that took me, and that's when the darkness really sort of started to set in. And I realised that I needed to get away. I had a run-in with somebody in a nightclub. I'd had enough. Saw him hitting a woman, and I do talk about this in the book, but I lost my temper on him and put me in hospital, and that sent me. I did some time away. And as I said, I don't really want to talk about that. I don't like,
It's your platform, Jack. You talk about whatever you want to talk about.
What I will say is that I said that I'd never go back. I'm too much of a free spirit to be able to deal with that, and the people can deal with it. I tip my hat to them, but I couldn't deal with it. I learned to read and write, which was a good thing.
Brilliant.
I always said if I could read and write, I'd be dangerous. Took another 20 odd years for me to do that, and then I knew I needed to get away. I had a friend that must have been 99. Actually, just before I went away, 99, and Darren, his name was, and he was teaching me how to be a DJ, and he was teaching me close-up magic, and he was just a mentor. He lived on the floor above me in the Masonette, and he took me under his wing. He was a 33-year-old guy. I'm this 18, 19, 20-year-old kid, and he was teaching me all these things, and he saw how I was hurting, and he tried to get me away from all the other people, and he locked me in a room and watched me go cold turkey, and he sat there and he took all the shit. He took the swearing, the punches, the hate that I threw towards him, and he just sat there and held me and hugged me. This was a 6'5", 22-stone bloke who showed so much love, but he also had a lot of love for my poetry and my mind. So he would take me to these poetry competitions all over. So we'd go to places like Bradford and Leeds and whatever, and I'd perform his poetry. And then he was killed in an accident. He drove, the gully machines that clean the streets.
Yeah.
He was driving them down a country road, and somehow he'd lost control, and it had gone down a big hill, and he'd got thrown through the window, and the truck had landed on him and broke his pelvis and his legs, and he was getting better in hospital. In fact, he was even walking after a few weeks. And then he just went, I'm tired. Went to bed and never woke up. I'd not long lost my best friend to suicide. He threw himself in front of a train in front of me. So I'm this kid with this mind that is broken beyond belief. I moved to Portsmouth, spent a bit of time in Gosport and Fareham. I'd started going to these day programs, trying to get sober. One run by the Cranston Project and the other run called Street Lights.
Was this purely alcohol at this stage?
No.
Okay.
No, this was alcohol, weed. I would smoke heroin on occasion. Crack. Loved crack. Too much. If paracetamol had got me, I had taken it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be in my own head. So I'm living in Portsmouth. I'm away from my family. And I got on a day program, and I was getting sober. And then, the guy said, knowing that I love film, he said, if you get to 30 days sober, I'll take you to a film set. I got to 30 days sober, took me to a film set, and I fell in love with it.
Oh.
And then I got on the Prince's Trust. Did that. I got a job working as a sound man and comedy club magician at the Wedgwood Rooms in Portsmouth. I was building my life back up, and then I met a woman through my housemate that lived in Norwich, and we got together. And I ended up moving to Norwich in 2001. And I was all right for a few years. I was going to meetings and not using, not really drinking, trying to controlling it like you think you can. I was doing it quite well. And then I got involved with the local film industry. We've got two universities here, and one of them is a very good creative university where they do a really good film studies thing. So I got involved with some people that was doing that. I'd written a script based on my life, but a bit of a, master's fiction, you might say. Got some pretty decent people interested in it, some well-known names. I was going out, and then I was drinking and doing Charlie with them, and it changed me again. And in that I found my real mum and started building a relationship with her and my brother and my sister. I'd lost contact with my adoptive parents, my adoptive mum, who I love very much, and we're now speaking again, but for a few years we didn't. And that was through shame, really, from me. And then it all kicked off. I got ill. I ended up homeless. I was sleeping in the shop doorway of HMV in Norwich a couple of nights a week and sofa surfing when I could. I was going through treatment for lymphoma. I was losing everything. I was losing my mind. I was trying to go to meetings and I was getting stabbed in the back. I was, this film was getting made. My passion project was getting made. And I remember turning up on set. So I had a small part and I turned up on set. And I'd had a few. I'd had a cheeky line or two as well. And the guy that was producing said to me, "Can you just sign this? It's a actor release form." And I signed the whole thing away for 4 years.
So do you find, Jack, that it was a double-edged sword in the sense that it gave you a great opportunity to focus on something, but because of that environment, the temptations that went with it were actually counterproductive?
Yeah, it was. These were very toxic people.
Mm.
They weren't even creme de la creme. They were just people that I thought could do a good job because they went to film school.
Yeah.
And they worked on lots of films.
Yeah.
So my marriage ended.
All right.
Didn't know what to do. And I spent a couple of years just between the streets, sofa surfing, staying in the spare bedroom of a lad. But that was kind of a double-edged sword because he was a big pothead and we were out doing whatever we could on a night to get the money so we could carry on doing it. And my mental health had just failed. I tried suicide several times. I remember I'd got a little studio flat for a little while, and I say studio flat. It was basically a kitchen with a couch and then some stairs that went up to an attic bedroom. I got hold of a gun. I shaved my head, shaved my beard, had a shower, made myself look nice, made myself smell nice, written a suicide note, sat in the chair, little wicker chair it was, by the window. Gun up to my throat, pulled the trigger and it jammed.
Without me sounding too particular, was that a handgun?
Yeah.
Or, yeah, it was a handgun. It jammed.
It jammed. So I tried it again and it jammed. Just as I was about to try it again, my phone rang. Don't know why I answered it, but I did. I said, "Look out your window." Looked out my window and my mate was sat there and had me going to a church for a little while, and he said, don't know why, but he said God wanted me to come here today. I told him what was happening. And there was an armistice bin by our local Nick, so we decided to wipe it down and take it up there, drop it in the armistice bin.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got indoctrinated into this religion, these people that called themselves Christians. You went in and it's like, welcome home. And they said they were my family and they said they wanted to help me, and they just, whatever I could offer, they were grateful for it. And then when I couldn't offer anymore, they pushed me to one side. And I had to walk away from that. And then it's funny we should be doing this today, because 8 years ago today, there's a food bank, and on a morning, the coffee morning, they'd have a coffee morning, Friday morning coffee morning, and they serve coffee and cake, and it was nice. It was warm, and the street guys would go there, and we'd sit there and we'd have a chat, and it would be, we'd talk to the Christians. They seemed nice, and they would give us food. And this woman walked in, and she was helping out. She had a little baby, no older than what, a month or two, maybe 3 months old. And she liked my t-shirt, so we started talking, and she offered to buy me some tobacco. Despite being told not to, she took me for a meal, nice warm meal. And I always say God sent me an angel that day, because I'd asked him to kill me, because I couldn't handle it no more.
If I'm sitting here smiling there, Jack, because this is the bit I've been waiting for. This is the bit that I've wanted the viewers to know, and I've tried not to bring that forward too quickly. I've wanted you to get to that point at your own pace, and I think you've done that very vividly, very very brave, if I can say that. So yeah, now let's talk about this great woman that entered into your life.
So she listened. She listened. She really listened, and she, despite being told by some of the members not to give me any sort of precedent, she did. She took me for a meal in Norwich, and she was really nice. And I was still going through some problems, and I was on and off the gear. And I made a conscious, I would come back every week, and she wouldn't be there. She wouldn't be there. She'd had a lot of problems, but I'd got a number. I'd been going through some problems, and I lost my uncle, and went back home for that, back up to Yorkshire for that, and we not long lost my auntie as well. So I was hurting a bit, and I was on my way back, and I was passing her hometown on the train. And I don't know why I messaged her, and we started talking, and then we just started meeting each other, and I'd started the process of wanting to heal. So there I was, sat in a crack house. At least it was warm. Must have been 10 o'clock at night. Bowl in my hand. And I said, God, don't even know if you exist. I like to think you do, but if you do, either take me now, take me away, or take away this hunger, take away this thirst for drugs, because I can't do it on my own. And I fell asleep. And I woke up about 1 minute past 2 minutes past 12 on the 27th of June, 2014, and I haven't used a day since. He took it away.
I've seen pictures of you, photos of you from the past, and you look, quite a robust man now. But I've seen what you looked like before, and you've come from it Far from it. You got totally ill.
I was. But the thing was, the thing was, I was getting better. This was the June. And then towards the end of the year, I moved in with her.
Mm.
And things were going all right. And I put on a bit of weight. I was 6 stone when 6.5, 7 stone maybe when we met. And, I was sober, but not always sober in head.
Mm.
But we were living together, and I took on her kids, and she took on my daughter, and we'd got this ready-made family, and it was great.
Mm.
I started going to a church that didn't want anything from me. They just wanted to love me.
Mm.
They just wanted me to be part of their thing, and they showed me some real sort of love.
Mm.
And then February 2015, I started feeling ill, and my health had started to go down. I'd gone from about 10 stone. I think I got up to 10, 11 stone at one point, and I started rapidly losing weight. I ended up in A&E in the February with a fat gallbladder, but they wouldn't remove it. I couldn't eat anything with any amount of fat in because it would aggravate me. And then the March, must have been the second weekend in March. And when I was going to bed, I started to shake, and I was having night sweats. And I was shaking so hard that I thought I was going to leave the bed. And, I was surviving on painkillers and prayer, just taking paracetamol after paracetamol, IB, whatever I could. So the Friday I went to pick my daughter up from school and then take her back to her mum's, and then, get her bag ready and then bring her back here to this beautiful little town that I now live in, in the rural part of Norfolk. And, I must say this town's been a big part of my healing as well.
All right.
And we must have walked 100 yards from the house, and every single bit of air came out of my body. It just forced out of my lungs. And I just and I couldn't breathe. And I sat on a little wall, just trying to compose myself, trying not to scare my daughter. She must have only been about 6 at the time, 6, 7 at the time. And managed to get home. It was really rough that night. And then the next morning I started feeling better. I hadn't eaten for a couple of days. But I was 6 stone. And managed a bacon sandwich, and I took the kids out like I do every Saturday. Took them for cakes and stuff like that. And I managed a bacon sandwich and coffee. And then on the Sunday morning, excuse me, I just said to my partner then, my wife now, but I said, I can't do this. I said, I need to go to the hospital. So I rang my daughter's mother and said, look, can you come and get her, please? I'm going to have to get an ambulance. I don't get an ambulance, I'll come and get you. We'll take you to the hospital. You can give your daughter a kiss and let her know that it's going to be all right. That must have been about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. By 7:30, I was dead. Type 2 lung failure, double pneumonia, pleurisy, tuberculosis, and some disease that they hadn't seen in about 30 or 40 years. The stuff that they had me on was toxic. I've taken some mind-altering drugs in my time, but these were, you know, affecting my hearing, my smell, all my senses.
Mm.
And I became convinced that I'd caused the end of the world with this disease. That caused a worldwide pandemic because people getting near me, it was a super virulent form of tuberculosis, and people were dropping dead outside my door. They wanted to section me while I was in there. I went mute for a while. I wouldn't eat. Couldn't eat. I was convinced that they were poisoning my food with my own blood, which was making me worse and worse and worse. I was convinced that God had done this. He was punishing me. I had so much guilt and shame in my life for the things that I'd done for the people that I'd hurt.
Mm.
That my mind just broke, and I had this total psychological, mental, spiritual, and physical breakdown. And these people from this church that I told you about that just wanted me were coming to sit by my bed every day to tell me that they love me, to tell me that we want me to get better, trying to get me to eat. And disgusting words were coming out my mouth. I was getting violent. So I was convinced that they'd been replaced by robots or clones or whatever. People were dying, and the bodies were rising outside the hospital, and they were being put into a pile and burned. And they were holding the kangaroo court outside my door, and some of the ones that had survived were holding this kangaroo court. And the only one that was talking any sense was my niece that I hadn't seen since she was about 4 or 5 years old. All the rest of them wanted to do harm to me. And they were dying one by one. You know, I was even convinced at one point that the only person that he was going to represent me in this kangaroo court, and that was Judge Rinder. Because I knew he was
Someone he was someone you could recognise, wasn't he? It was a recognised.
Yeah, but he worked with war criminals. Yeah. You know, he represented war criminals, and that's what I thought I was. Mm. But he was so disgusted that his heart stopped and he died outside. And this went on for what seemed like months and months and months and months. In reality, it was weeks. Mm. And I found out that, the lead pastor, he's coming on my podcast in a few weeks. And they came to pray for my soul. Because they were told they were going to lose me. Which obviously I wouldn't eat, I wouldn't drink, I wouldn't take my medication, I wouldn't do anything. Then I met Jesus at the end of my bed. And don't ask me what it looks like or what it sounds like. I just know it was Jesus. And that darkness that was sat over my face, that vivid darkness, kind of peeled away. And it was like somebody had tuned me in properly. And I could see properly again. I could think properly again. I'd had this almighty rash as an adverse reaction to one of these drugs. And it felt like what I thought they were torturing me. It felt like they burnt me with acid. Mm. And it was still stinging. And I hadn't washed for a week. I wouldn't. But they brought me in this bowl and this sponge, and I just decided to wash. And as I was washing, it seemed like it was just peeling away and getting better. And I made the nurse happy because I said I wanted something to eat. so happy that she went and made me a sandwich. We're friends to this day. And I'd had a job before I went in there. I was working for a company writing policies. And I got made redundant while I was in there, unbeknownst to me. But there was a nice couple of £100 put in my bank account and said, if you get to 8 stone again, you can leave. So they would bring my breakfast in on a morning. I would eat that, and then an hour later I'd go down and I'd buy another breakfast. People were bringing me in sweets, tins of spam. You know, you've never smelled anything like a hospital ward when they're cooking spam for you. You know, eating tins of spam, tins of corned beef. I was getting 2-for-1 pizzas every night, one for me and one for the nurses, just to bulk myself up. And within a couple of weeks, they said I could go home for the boy's birthday.
Brilliant.
And that was, you know, the end of April, start of May. But I still had all these demons. I was trying to deal with them now, so I'm going to church. You know, I'm working with people, and I've got myself an accountability person that, you know, hold myself accountable to. And you know, I just started getting better. Started building up trust. Started building up these relationships with people in the church. You know, and
Did you find it difficult, Jack? Because going back to your teenage years, where people had abused your trust, you know, was it strange to give up your trust to another group of people again?
yes, yeah. But I understood that, so they worked with me over time. And I started looking at things like trauma, these things that would make me go use again before. So I started learning about my own trauma, and I started dealing with some of these things. And then I always wanted to write a book. I thought that might put some of the demons to bed. I'd written some poems for a guy for the Paul Sykes books, and I wanted to do something. So I wrote my first book, A Personal Apocalypse, and that was, you know, about, you know, some of the things that I've just told you. But it was
Could you show us that, Jack, please, so that the viewers can see that in case they'd like to get a copy?
Now re-released, just recently re-released, and it's a memoir, but it's a poetic memoir because my brain works in a different way to most other people's brains, and it works on beats and words, and you know, I see a clear space and I want to write on it. But yeah, so I wrote it, and it got rid of some demons. I made some mistakes in there, but it helped me get rid of some demons. And then I was building my life back up, and then I spent 6 months working with escapees of human trafficking, sexual slavery, and exploitation, and I wrote a book about that, which is now out again. I'm really trying to push this one.
How would people get these books, Jack? Are these on Amazon?
Yeah, they're on Amazon.
Okay.
You can just type my name in Amazon, or you can go to my website jwgreg.wordpress.com, and they're on there. Or on the Accidental Journalis Facebook page, they're on there as well. And working with these people, started to identify with them. Well, that's what you're saying. What he did to you, that's what my teacher did to me. That's what they said to. So I'd started identifying with them, and I said that I wanted to be a voice for people that didn't have a voice, because as a homeless, mentally ill addict, I didn't have a voice. So I wanted to give a voice to other people. So that's what I started doing. And then, within the space of a couple of months, I lost my mum, my biological mum, to cancer. And then a couple of months later, my sister had a baby, her second baby, baby Luna. And I was sat at home, and I was going to just about to go out to church, and I got a phone call from my sister saying that there's been an accident. And I'm like, what's the matter? Well, she'd had the baby, and the baby was 2 days old, and obviously she'd had a pretty traumatic birth, so she'd gone to bed, and she'd left the baby with her partner, Liam. And he said he fell asleep with her on his knee, and he dropped her. She'd come downstairs, and the baby was unresponsive. So I went there, I said, keep me in touch. I went down to the church, got a whole church praying for him. Must have been the next day I get a phone call saying William's been arrested. He admitted to hitting her. He so hard he damaged the brain, broke a leg. She was in a coma. 5 days later, she passed on. And I hated him. And I planned how I could kill him. Not that I ever would have done, but these things go around your head, don't they?
And that's a conflict again for you, isn't it? Because you're surrounded by all these people who are teaching you love and understanding and so on, and embraced you, and yet, let's say, almost the devil's testing you all the time, isn't he? So it's almost like he's putting temptation your way to go and ruin all of that.
Yeah.
All that's been given to you.
And I knew I couldn't do that.
No.
And I couldn't go home because I knew if I did, I would do something stupid.
I clearly understand why you would want to. I do understand. There's no doubt about it. But you had enough drama in your life, mate. No.
But I hated him, and I held this resentment against him for a long, long time. We couldn't have a funeral because of what was going on. When they got life with a minimum of 10 years. Minimum of 10 years. We're only 20, 23, 24. So we would have been out in his early 30s.
Yeah.
Less than a year into his sentence, he's murdered by his cellmate.
Oh.
Murdered by a rapist.
Oh, God.
And my family were allowed the funeral. And I wanted to go, and one of the elders at the church, Chris, bless him, he said, I'll take you. Don't want you to go through it on your own, I'll take you. Paid for the hotel room and everything the night before. Stood with me. come out of the crematorium and lit a cigarette. His mum walked up to me and she put her arms around me and she hugged me. I broke. And I knew then I'd have to forgive him. Not for him, not for her, for me.
No, I understand that. I understand.
Because letting him in my head, letting him live rent-free in my head,
yeah,
letting him live my life, he's dead. I can't affect him in any way.
No.
But I knew I needed to forgive him because I knew that I needed to move on with my life. And it doesn't mean like what he was about,
No,
I knew that I needed to love him and forgive him. Love him enough to let him go and not live rent-free in my head anymore. And forgive him and forgive his mum. And I started to work on trauma, and I started to heal, and I started to get better. And it's not all been easy.
No, can't imagine it has been.
And I don't want to be that caricature of that, the parody of the man that I used to be anymore. When I turned my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him, when I decided that I was going to take a better path in life and change my life, because I met an angel. His name is Joanna. That I needed to completely and utterly change my life. So I couldn't go back there. So the only thing I can naturally do is work on me, and work on my mind, and work on my body, and work on my soul.
And you're entitled to that, Jack. You're entitled to that. You're entitled to do that.
Yeah. I said I've earned it. And my wife certainly earned her wings, but the first lockdown I really, really suffered. Like I said, I'm not a man that can be caged. So when the first lockdown hit, I felt so caged in. Even though I was going down to the shop and going up to town, I wasn't able to do the things that I needed to do. I wasn't able to see my daughter because both my wife and I have got underlying health issues, and I've got MS and things like that, and my wife's got health issues, and so I couldn't see my daughter for months. And she's always been my biggest supporter, my littlest biggest supporter. And I just really struggled. And then second lockdown, I was talking to my mate Jason Edwards, who's a hostage and barricade negotiator, among other things. And I wanted to do something. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to write another book or do something else, but I couldn't concentrate on writing another book. And he said to me, "Why don't you interview me on Facebook? Would do it over live." So I did. And then I was contacted by people saying that was brilliant. Do it again.
So was this the start of the Accidental Journalist?
It was. I never, ever meant to fall into journalism. I wanted to be an actor. I'd spent so many years trying to be an actor and getting knockback after knockback after knockback. I gave up on it. Yeah. And, I decided that I didn't want to be an actor. And actually, during that 2016, 2017, I got asked to go and speak to a Hollywood director by the name of Joanna Hogg, who was making a film that was funded by Martin Scorsese called The Souvenir, or two films, The Souvenir Parts 1 and 2. And she wanted to know about drug addiction, and she wanted to know what it was like. So I went and spoke to her, and then she asked me to play Ray in the film. So I played Ray in the film.
Right.
And then I was invited back for the second one, and I advised the cast and the crew, and on a certain way of life, and then that part of the consultation career.
Jack, sorry to interrupt. So was that as a researcher then? Were you employed as a researcher?
No, I was employed as a consultant.
Okay, yeah.
To go on and consult and to give a certain authenticity about that sort of life, and to do that they wanted me to play Ray, who was a heroin addict, which I did. And then I was asked to do other things as well. I went on some like Banged Up Abroad, and recently played John Eric Armstrong, the American serial killer.
What was that like to revisit that period of that identity again? Was that difficult, or was it a way of shedding it in some way?
Do you know what? It was all right until they asked me to set out the works with the art department. I was never really into needles, but setting out the tin foil and making that look like it had been chased on. I even made a little crack cooker for them out of a Coke can and some tea lights. That kind of affected me a little bit. And then when I watched Tom Burke play that part after I'd advised him, that hit me, and I did have a little cry on set, and that was all right. They understood. Then I went back for the second one in a couple of years ago. That was a bit easier. Because I'd started getting used to it, and I'd started doing these. I think the hardest one was playing John Eric Armstrong, because he's an absolute psycho. There's a man that admitted to murdering 13 women and having sex with corpses. This is a sick and evil man. There's a possibility that he killed up to 33 women, most of them sex workers. That was, I needed some help and reassurance after filming that, but so I started doing these. Then Dom Nagus, I contacted Dom Nagus off a whim and said, look, would you come on and kind of interview you? We became good friends after that, and he came on for the second one. I got Ben Span on, we all know Ben.
Yeah, Ben, yeah.
He came on for the third one. Then I contacted Peter Blexley, not thinking that he'd get back to me, and he agreed to come on. And when he came on, that's where it took off. That's where I fell into the accidental journalist, because for 2 days afterwards, people were ringing me saying, that was amazing. And yeah, I fell into the accidental journalism, and I became the accidental journalist, because that allowed me to still be Jack W. Gregory, but it allowed me to kind of separate that from the mantle of the accidental journalist, so I can do stuff as the accidental journalist, and I can do stuff as Jack W. Gregory, and there's a clear definition between, and I can, like I said, I do this in my shed, so I can leave that in my shed and then go in the house and be dad again, be husband again.
Yeah. I think you need to do that as well. I would say, yeah, to a certain degree, that I do similar. I do have to have that safe house, if you like. That's my interpretation of it, because I know my demons, and I know that I go from one extreme, whatever I do, I go from one extreme to another. So there has to be that somewhere else to come back to and go,
Same.
right. It's almost like a decompression chamber.
Yeah.
It kind of cleanses me for another period. And then I can go at it again. But I have to consciously stop every now and again and go, hold on, you need to slow yourself down here, mate. But that's great for you. I think that's ideal. And it must kind of take back a little bit, because when you say you used to take on these characters, these stories that you used to, pretend to be this person. I mean, if you look at it now coming forward, again, you're acting in the sense that you put your accidental journalist hat on, don't you? And that's what you become. But look, all the knowledge you've got to draw upon, all the experiences that you've got you've drawn, and you've had some great guests. I mean, I watch it. I watch every one of your interviews. You've had some great guests, and you deal with them really well. I think you ask some very relevant questions. So, what point would you say you're at now? Is it that, or have you got visions of where you're going to go from here?
I cannot think too far ahead. I'm not that sort of, but I try to live within the day. One or 2 days at a time. I love doing the interviews. If I'll be doing one, I'll be conducting one after this. At 9 o'clock. I love doing this. One of the reasons I started it was to build my confidence. I didn't really have any confidence left when I started it. I felt so dogged down with just self-doubt, and so I started it, and I started to enjoy it, started building a bit of confidence. I'm still learning, I never do quite know when to stop or when to shut up, or whether I'm boring the guests because I just sit there like that. But it's all a learning curve. I've learned so much. How long
ago would you say, Jack? Sorry to interrupt again. How long would you say since we spoke like this?
So I started this end of October 2019, and then that was when it was still known as ShedX.
Right. Okay.
Because I got turned down for a TEDx talk, and I wanted to take the piss, and I was doing it in my shed, so I called it ShedX. And I got in trouble for that. From the TED organisation. Then I started it again. I had a break over the Christmas, and then started it again in the January 2020, and I haven't stopped since. So you must have been around the first series, second series started this January. So you must have been around about March, April last year, maybe.
Okay. Well, let me tell you now, my friend, you look 100% better, mate. You look well in yourself, in your face. Your demeanour is totally different. You sound far more confident. Don't get me wrong. That's not to say you weren't articulate, during that interview, because you were. But you just look a much happier, contented man, and you certainly look fitter.
I know who I am.
Yeah.
In this past eight years, it's not only been a journey of, learning about other people, but it's been learning about myself.
Yeah.
Because all those years that I stunted myself with the drink and the drugs, I still didn't know who I was. So I was trying to be all these other people.
Yeah.
And I hated that man.
Yeah. You've got an identity now, haven't you? You've got more.
I have.
Identity. You're a fan. You're not only the accidental journalist, and you're not only, Jack W. Gregory. You're a family man as well.
I am. I've got.
You're a member of your church. You've got a very clear identity now, and
and I know what that is, and I know who I am in the community. I volunteer at my church, and I've got a server's heart. So I like to serve my community. I like to serve my church, and as you see a lot on I put on Facebook here serving, on a Tuesday night, on a Tuesday morning, on a Friday, sometimes on a Sunday, a lot of times. And I love it. I absolutely love it because it gives me what I never had, which is hope, which is what my wife helped give me. We got married in end of October 2019. So we're coming up, what is it, 3 years now? But yeah, I mean, my life is so different to what it was. I did to a point start feeling like I was, because I was getting people on, and my the whole Live and on Drugs platform is about giving a voice to other people, like you do yourself. And I kind of started feeling that I'd losing my voice myself. And it was again Jason that said, "Look, my friend, you've got so much to offer. You've got so much to give, so much knowledge that you've learned, so much life experience that you should be talking about it." So I was asked to go on a couple of other podcasts, and I did, and then started going on American podcasts, and now I'm doing it pretty much every week, where I've been asked to go and speak to other people. I'm in the process of finishing the third book, The Asylum Monologues, which is an experiment that I've been doing in film for the past 8 years since I got sober. One person, one chair, one camera. You're told that mental health, addiction, disability is all illegal. We're living in a dystopian world, and you've been sectioned under the Mental Health Act. Go. And it's surprising how much darkness comes out of people, and how much of themselves that they put in, because they're able to talk about it. So I did 2 films, 2 short films of that, and then a slightly longer episode that I released to a few film competitions, and it got a couple of nominations. I made a short film with a guy called Earl Ling, called Release, and that nominated for a few awards, won a couple of awards. I think it got something like 15, 16 film nominations. So yeah, but that all draws back on the asylum stuff. So I decided to just like transcribe them and then write the experiment down and tell people what happened. So that'll be out in the next month or two, and then I don't know what I'm going to do next. I think possibly either a Streetlights 2, or I've already got the forwards for a second personal apocalypse book, sent by Ray Bishop, Terry Ellis. They were really kind enough to write forwards for me.
I'm in regular contact with Terry.
He's a good guy.
And I had a good interview with Terry, and ironically, I've been in touch with Ray as well. So I should look forward to speaking with Ray sometime in the future. It may sound a bit trite to some people, Jack, when we say that we want to meet and speak with real and inspiring people, because we know there's thousands of people out there who just do not get access, to social media, or they don't get an opportunity to just sit and have a conversation with somebody, and have that recorded and have that shared to a wider audience. So, when we say real and inspiring, it's not just a slogan. It's just not something we've chosen, for this particular podcast. We actually mean it, and you've certainly been real today, and inspiring lots of different ways. I'm sure this will go out on Saturday morning, as I say, on those various platforms, and I anticipate that people are going to be very inspired by what you've come through, and what you offer other people, the hope that you clearly offer, and from us, frankly speaking, we hope what's coming to you in the future is all good, particularly your health, and I mean both mentally, emotionally and physically, and your good lady, and your family and your congregation, for that matter, your fellow congregation. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to ask you if you can just stay behind for 5 minutes so we can have a debrief, so to speak. And in the meantime, I just again like to thank our sponsor, Casual Minds. I'd like to thank Gary at Mac the Hat Media for all his support and advice. And again, I'd like to thank the viewers. If you could subscribe, if you could like and leave comments, that would be very helpful to both us, frankly speaking, but more importantly, the guests that we have on. I think it's a sign of respect to them, and also to encourage people such as Jack to come along and share their stories with us. So, Jack, once again, thanks, mate, for coming along. Really appreciate it. Lovely to get a chance to have a chat with you again, and clearly we'll keep in touch in the future. So, from us at Frankly Speaking, Jack, all the best. We wish you all the best.
Thank you, and thank you for being a great host.
Lovely. Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it.